Welcome to the Fatherhood Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Pluff. Each week, we will cover various topics that dads struggle with in their fitness journey. I'll give you actionable steps that you can apply right away, not only to take back control of your own health, but so you're able to be a better example for your kids too. Being a dad is by far the coolest thing I'll ever get to do. It's challenging, it's overwhelming at times, but it's like endlessly rewarding, right? There's always milestones your kids are going to reach. There's always things to look forward to with being a dad. And with that, though, kind of the old Spider-Man quote, with great power comes great responsibility, right? And I think a lot of us take this for granted, and I myself do this too. And just kind of the day to day stuff. Like it's easy to say you want to be a role model for your kids. You want to be somebody your kids look up to, and we think about that. As they get older, they're going to look back on these things. But it's that day to day stuff. I think it was Jerry Seinfeld who said, don't worry about quality time. Like give me the garbage time. Give me that time, where you're not planning it, where you're just sitting there, you know, being with him. That's the time, that really matters. And I think, we all have that opportunity every single day, right? Every meal we eat, we have the opportunity to show our kids, what a healthy relationship with food looks like. If we're struggling with something and we don't get a handle on it, there's a good chance our kids will struggle with that too. And so, would you would you be okay if your kids ended up just like you? And I don't know. I mean, that's something that I've struggled with a lot, especially when I first became a dad. Before my son was born, there were a lot of things, I never wanted my kids to be like me. But it's now that I've had three kids, like I look at it as over the growth I've had in the past 4 years of my life or so has been incredible. And I don't think I would have gotten there if I did not have kids. um I mean, if you only have one kid, you're obviously going to make changes. If you have two kids, it helps prepare yourself. The more experience you have something. But now that I have three kids, like and I wouldn't say things are easier now, or like I have a handle on things, but I'm able to understand kind of where I've been, or what has worked, what hasn't worked, right? And be able to kind of implement some of those changes, and right. And so I think a lot of times we dads struggle with wanting to make our own mistakes. So obviously, like, the failure is the best teacher, right? You can learn from things, get the lesson, or implement the lessons that you've learned from things, and then be able to move on, right? But if we can learn from other people, we can speed up that learning process. And a lot of times we don't. We kind of learn as we go here. And as I remember before my son was born, to be honest, like I was terrified at times because I was like, I wasn't sure on something. How am I going to do this? I'm struggling with it. How can I teach my son this if this is something I struggle with too? But like I said, it's been a great, not only learning experience, but pretty much life changing experience, because it's forced me to make changes in my life too. And I think that's the whole point of it, right? It's not that you have to be perfect now, and your kids don't expect you to be perfect either. It's letting them see where maybe you're lacking, and then continue to improve, and not just not doing anything about it. Just changing that mindset, trying to get away from, I can't do this, I don't do that. Well, yeah, if you say you can't do this, you don't do that, you're probably not going to, right? But maybe that's not something you do right now, but you can learn, right? You can learn, you can continue to get better. And there are things that we did with my son when he was born that we didn't do with my daughter, that we're not going to do with my daughter, or the newest daughter. And so you're continuing to learn, and I think that's important for your kids to see too, because if you have this idea of, or if you kind of, not, maybe you don't have the idea, but if your kids believe you have the idea that, like, you're kind of a finished product, then they're going to have that too, and they're going to really struggle with failure. That's something I used to struggle with a lot too. I didn't know how to do something, and so I would rather just not try. I would rather not try than fail. But there's beauty in the failure there. You can learn, you can continue to move forward, and then you can teach other people, right? And so maybe your health and fitness has been something that you haven't made a priority to this point. Okay, you can't change that. That's fine. You can't change what you did, but you can change what you're going to do. You can change from this moment on, right? Maybe when you grew up, nutrition wasn't something that was emphasized. And so you kind of let yourself go a little bit. It wasn't your fault, right? When you're a kid, it's not your fault. It's not your kid's fault. But now it's your responsibility. You're a, you're the leader of your family. You're your kid's dad. It is your responsibility to teach them. If you were a finished product today, would you be okay if your kids ended up just like you? I know for me personally, I would not, right? And that's why I continue to push myself there. I continue to try and get better, in every area of my life, because I'm going to get to a point, we're going to, you're going to get to a point where, maybe they stop learning those lessons from you, or they're as not as impressionable anymore, and they're going to have to teach their kids, right? And so, like, it sounds kind of like far off. Maybe your kids are really young right now, like mine are, but eventually they're going to have kids too, and a lot of the lessons your grandkids learn are going to be from your kids that you taught them. And so, if in my mind, if they don't learn something, if they don't know something, that's on me, right? If they're struggling with something, how can I help them? And then when they become adults, that personal responsibility, that it's on them. But for me, I want to continue to improve myself constantly, every single day, and so that I give them the best chance to learn, right? My fitness, right? Like, for a long time, I was, I would say I was above average in fitness, right? There were certain things I lacked in, but outside eyes looking in, I was doing better than most. But that wasn't good enough for me, right? Better than most wasn't good enough for me. I knew I could do more. I'm a coach, but I've hired multiple coaches. I have a coach right now that I work with who helps keep me accountable, who teaches me new things. I only know what I know. I'm learning new things in nutrition all the time. I'm learning new things in fitness, and I'm going to continue to learn. I will pay for more coaches in the future, right? Not because I necessarily need that accountability, but I only know what I know, right? I only know what I know. You only know what you know. And so if you can continue to learn from other people, if you continue to improve, then I can teach those lessons to my kids too. I can teach that to my son. I can teach that lesson to my daughters. And so, you know, I I would not, if this was my final product right now, I wouldn't be okay if my kids ended up just like me, right? I'd like to believe, they took all the best qualities, right? But that's not how it works, right? They're gonna get your good qualities, they're gonna get your bad qualities too. And so it's my job to improve my good qualities, and then the qualities that I'm struggling with, I'm gonna make those better too, right? Or maybe just completely get rid of them, and then they're gonna have their own struggles too. But I think it is so important to not only looking, you can look like a role model to your kids, but I think it's extremely important to feel like a role model to your kids too. And how do you do that? You get in the arena, you work hard every day. You're gonna fail, you're gonna mess up. That's okay. That's okay. It's your kids are gonna fail, right? They fail all the time. They're super resilient. Kids are way more resilient than us. If they weren't resilient, they'd never learn how to walk. How many times did they fall when they were trying to walk? But they kept getting back up. Imagine if you just had like half of that resiliency, right? When we struggle with something, we're trying to lose weight, we're tracking our food, the scale goes up, you give up. We're planning on going to the gym 3 or 4 times a week. We only make it once or twice. I'll start again Monday. Doesn't happen. I'll go Friday. Doesn't happen. All of a sudden, it's middle of February. Still not happening, right? No, we'll try. We'll try the spring, the summer. Maybe things will slow down. No, just start where you are. You want to go to the gym 2 to 3 days a week. You only make it once. Awesome. Next week, shoot for two. You've been trying to lose weight. You're tracking your calories. You thought you were going to hit your calorie goal. Your brother came over to watch the Super Bowl with you. Maybe you had a couple beers, a few pieces of cheesecake. You went over your calorie goal for the day. Okay, get back on track on Monday. But keep getting better, right? Don't let it push you down. Stay resilient, right? It's hard. It's definitely hard, especially if you've had that mindset for a long time that, maybe you feel like you're not good enough, right? That's that's hard to live with. Maybe you feel like you're not good enough. Maybe you feel like you're not a great example for your kids. That's to to be honest, that's pretty common. And that's hard. But the more you put in the work on yourself, you're going to be able to increase that confidence, right? You might not have confidence right now because you don't have anything to have confidence for, right? You don't have that body of work. Think about something you're really good at. Why do you have confidence in that, right? Maybe it's your job. Maybe you're in marketing, maybe you're a sales rep or something. Why do you have confidence in your job? Because you have past history that tells you, "Hey, I'm pretty good at this." But did you have that confidence right away? Probably not, right? Kids do. Kids are resilient. Kids ask for what they want, right? They're resilient, but eventually we get that knocked out of us. And a lot of times that's our fault as dads because we don't nurture that. And so it's important to, have a body where you don't know you don't have confidence in the gym. Okay. Go one day. You stay for 5 minutes. Next time, go for 10. Walk on the treadmill. Now you have a body of work. You can build off that. You got to work out it. You said you were going to work out one day a week this week. You kept your word. One of the things I preach over and over, especially to myself, is that the moment you can keep the promises you make to yourself, your life will change. You say you're going to get up at 6 a.m., get up at 6 a.m. You just built a win right there. You said you're going to work out, you work out. That's another win right there. All of a sudden, at the end of the day, you have all these wins. This is what you said you were going to do. This is what you said. This is what you actually did. When those two things align, you have an entire list of wins for that day. The next day, you're going to feel pretty good. Chances are you're going to have some more wins. But if you said you were going to work out, you were going to get up early, you were going to track your food, you were going to meal prep, you do none of that, how are you going to feel that day after? Probably not very good. Are you going to get right back on track the next day? Probably not, because your confidence is going to take a hit, right? And confidence is huge. Confidence, I don't know if there's a way to measure it, but it would not surprise me if confidence is at an all-time low right now with a lot of people. Because we compare ourselves. We see people on Instagram, we see people on Facebook, we compare ourselves. And I know I do it too. I do it too. I've tried to limit myself. I try to unfollow or just not unfollow, but not even look, set time limits on Instagram. And when you compare yourself to other people, you see what they're doing, it can be discouraging. But that's not my goal. That's not what I want my kids to compare themselves to. I don't want my kids to compare themselves to their friends or their cousins or even me, right? I want them to compare themselves to who they used to be, to who you used to be. Like, be the example for them. Show them how to measure things. You're measuring backwards, not to your ideal, because you're never going to get there. You're never going to reach your ideal because the goalpost will always change. You will always want to improve something. So you're not comparing yourself to your ideal, you're comparing yourself to who you used to be, right? And so when you can stack these wins, you're measuring backwards. As Benjamin Hardy, Dan Sullivan say in the book The Gap and the Gain, you're measuring backwards. Always measure backwards, right? You're stacking these wins each day. At the end of each day, look back. What were your wins? Maybe right now your confidence is really low. Maybe your confidence is real low right now, so you have to stack wins a little sooner. Set reminders in your calendar. 9 o'clock. What's been my win so far? I got up early today. I said I was going to. Awesome. That's a win right there. Lunchtime, look back. What have you done? Oh, I've sent 10 emails. I've talked to 2 potential clients, things like that. Awesome. Write that down. 4 o'clock comes, into the workday. What'd you do? I ate I prepped my food last night. I ate that for lunch today. You got that done. That's a win right there. 3 wins right there. You get your workout in after work. That's another win. Keep track of these things, right? And keep track of it maybe in your phone somewhere you can see it because you're going to forget, right? Life is busy all the time. You're going to forget. So stack wins. Continue to build. Increase your confidence. Don't just, you can lose weight. You can be in great shape. You can make changes in your life. But if your confidence is low, it's chances are you'll go back if you're not measuring yourself in an appropriate manner. Chances are you'll fall back to where you may not feel worthy of your results. A lot of people lose weight every year, and the majority of them gain it back because some of them don't feel like they deserve it. They don't deserve it. But if you're putting in the work, you're doing the work, you deserve it. You deserve those results, right? And how you measure yourself, how you measure success, your kids are going to do the same too, right? And so it's your job. If something's not ideal in your life, it is your responsibility to improve that area. And so your kids can improve that area of their life or maybe never have to struggle with that, right? We all it's so important, for to, you know, not, let your kids have their own struggles, right? You can't save them from everything because they have to learn how to triumph, how to go through those things, but you can teach them that, right? Teach them that lesson, right? But there are certain things you can avoid, self-confidence issues. you know I think everybody's probably going to go through it at some point in your life, but you can avoid it. And if you've gone through it yourself, if you've gone through something yourself, who better to teach their son than their own dad? Who better to teach their daughter than their dad, right? And so if you're struggling in your nutrition, you're struggling in your fitness, reach out. You can always, if you're not part of my private Facebook group, Fatherhood Fitness, join. The link is in the description of this episode. Join my group. Ask any question you have. Every week I do a Facebook Live session on topics based off what clients are struggling with, what members of the group need help with. And so, if this is something you're struggling with, and this is an area that doesn't get talked about a lot with dads, especially, it's just confidence is hard, and confidence is a big reason. It's easy to say, like, the reason I'm not losing weight is because I'm eating too much. Sure, but why are you eating too much? Well, maybe because you don't feel good enough. Maybe because you have really low confidence. Maybe there's something else entirely, right? There's something else going on. Sure, that on surface level, yeah, you're eating too many calories. You're not working out enough. Things like that. Those are surface level things. You got to dig a little deeper. If you want results to last, you got to dig a little deeper, right? You got to do the work on yourself. And so I'm going to ask you again, would you be okay if your kids ended up just like you? If your answer to that is not a resounding yes, it's time to make a change. That concludes this episode of the Fatherhood Fitness Podcast. Thank you for those of you who took time out of your busy schedules to listen. If you have any questions or comments or an idea for a topic for a future episode, please feel free to reach out, and I'd love to hear from you.